Well, hello, and thank you for joining me for another Alex on Tech and IT Wire interview. I'm joined today by Craig Smith. He's an autism educator and accessibility specialist. Welcome to the program.
Thanks so much for having me.
Now, we're joined today because this is on tomorrow, Thursday, the 16th of May, is Global Accessibility Awareness Day. And if you add .org to the end of that, you'll have the website. So, and, you know, accessibility, I'll get you to tell us about this, but I mean, we've seen technology change so many things in our lives, gifting new capabilities to us all, but especially to those with accessibility issues. So, you know, tell us about the day, tell us a bit about your work, and then, you know, tell us what are the top three biggest changes you've seen in the past couple of decades that have really made the most impact technologically for those with accessibility issues.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a really exciting day for us in the field because we just get to celebrate the stuff that we do all the time and that we want to sort of shout from the rooftops about how good accessibility is and how much it adds to everybody's experience. And I think that's often the message that comes out most on Global Accessibility Awareness Day is there are things that are designed in the hardware, the software that we use, the content that we create that are accessible to everybody, but that just make everyone's experiences better, regardless if you've got particular accessibility needs yourself or diagnosed needs. It just makes it a more enjoyable, more successful space for all of us to do the stuff that we want to do. My work is as an autism educator, so I've worked in the field for about 15 years, and I've always been interested in technology and the role that it can play in education. And I said it would have been around 10 years ago that I started to get particularly interested in accessibility and certainly for autism, but also for a really wide range of needs. So that's sort of how I came into this space.
Yeah.
In terms of the top three things that tech has been doing to lead us to this point, I think it's been really interesting to see how much mainstream technology has incorporated the sort of specialised accessibility tools that used to be something that, you know, even going back 8 or 9 years, we used to have to buy specialised bits of hardware. If we wanted to have something that would help children communicate their needs, we need to buy phenomenally expensive specialized hardware. If we wanted to have particular, even there used to be like big buttons that would have kids to push and record words, and they were specialized things. Now they're in our pockets, you know, they're in our phone, they're in our tablets, our devices, and they are just a part of all commercial products. And I think that's exciting because it allows us to show everybody that what's in their pockets actually has the most powerful accessibility tools. It's just a matter of knowing how to use them. So that's one. Two is definitely around how much technology has allowed people to focus on their niche special interests and their own little. One of my big focuses is on how we get people's individual strengths and interests to really be maximised, and particularly with the kids I'm working with, we take a strengths-based approach, and that often means that we can use technology to really focus in on what they love. And I think in the past, sometimes tech was a bit broad. You had to find a very particular program that you hoped would meet someone's needs, but now there just seems to be something for everybody, and it's very, very nice and niche in that way. And you can connect with others. You know, if you've got a very particular interest in a very particular thing, you're bound to find 10,000 others out there who love the same thing. So that's been great. And I think the third thing would be just how much the ability to be a bit DIY and a bit creative has come into the accessibility space. We're seeing more and more people hack together different solutions for accessibility these days, whether it's using Arduino circuit boards and Raspberry Pi and make interesting controllers for video games. And yeah, it's just a whole new world opening up. So it's been lovely to see the evolution of that over the past couple of years.
Now, I understand that you're the deputy principal as well of a school for students with autism. So what are the technologies that you're using in your school?
Yeah, so we often, I think the dominant tool that we use is the iPad.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been really interested in seeing how the iPad is a really creative tool. It's certainly, we know it's got the educational abilities that it has to have all different range of educational apps. But what I've been interested in particularly is how can it be used as a tool to help people be more independent. So to help our students more independently navigate their days, more independently communicate their needs. And that's the type of thing that the iPad allows us to do in our school. So I often say it's like it's my Swiss Army knife that can just do anything I need it to do.
Yeah.
And again, going back in time, I mean, it almost seems trite to think about the days where we used to get a digital camera, we'd photograph different things around the classroom, print those out, laminate them, put them on the board. Now we've got so many interactive visual timetables for our kids, virtual social stories that explain particular social situations to the child in really interactive ways, using things like Minecraft, to create alternate versions of our school to model different activities in. It's just turned into a whole new world. So for us, it started with the iPad and it's expanded into, I guess, lots of auxiliary resources that attach to that too. Like Sphero, the little robot ball that we can attach to iPad. We do all sorts of things where we go into the garden and get kids to do, I mean, on one side, you've got educational goals like learning how to measure things in space, how far does the ball need to roll before we can get to this span of, but also things like we had a young student who was very anxious about going into a school hall. So at the assembly, very noisy, very challenging environment for this student. And one of his teachers said, could you guide the Sphero ball, because the lad loved this ball.
Yeah.
He's like, can you be brave enough to guide it into the school hall? I'm sure Sphero would love to see this space. Can you be confident enough to do so?
Yeah.
And the kid was like, yeah, I'll be brave enough to roll Sphero in and show him the school hall. And then the student himself was in there and climatized himself and did great. So we're always looking for those little life hacks that you can use technology to, achieve our goals.
What a wonderful way to change his perspective, and so that it wasn't about him and his fears, but it was about him controlling this pharaoh, and he sort of was just thrust into that environment, and it was like he didn't, like you said, it was a life hack. He was hacked into being there and loving it, as opposed to fearing it. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, and of course the iPad is, as you said, the Swiss Army knife. It's the blank slate upon which anything can be programmed, and that I mean, I've got a friend who has had a stroke some years ago, and he's got speech dysphagia, so I can understand the beginning of his sentence and the end of his sentence, but the middle is just almost incomprehensible. I have to guess. We have to play a game of charades every time he's trying to communicate something. And I was looking online to see what sort of apps there were on iPhones, because he doesn't have an iPad, he's got an iPhone. And I saw there were some autism apps, about $500, but they were very, very detailed and allowed students to, people with autism to really communicate. So I can imagine, and I'm going to ask you, I mean, you must have students who, thanks to the iPad, can really communicate much more openly and independently than ever before if it weren't for this technology.
You're absolutely right. And certainly the portability of the device has made all the difference. Even though in the past we did have different communication devices that were able to, you could push the button and it would say words.
Sure.
It's nothing like what we've got now.
Yeah.
Like on an iPhone, you can install these apps, you can construct really complicated sentences, customized to whatever the user needs.
Yeah.
And for our students, the best way for them to learn language is in context. So rather than sitting in a room and us trying to simulate all the sorts of things that the child would need to say across their day, we go outside. We go on the playground, we go to the shops, and we can take our device with us. And the child can walk up to the checkout, staff and ask for particular things on their iPhone with those apps in a way that is just independent and a really natural part of their day. And that sort of thing is phenomenally powerful.
Yeah.
When it becomes normalized, when the kid and it grows with them too. So I've seen kids who got it when they were 8 years old. They're now 16.
Yeah.
They're young adults. They're going to jobs. They're going on dates. They're doing things, and they're using these tools. And that's amazing.
It's like a digital part of their brain. It's also a bit like in the E.T. movie, they had the speak and spell, and we had those little pocket calculators, and that's the difference between back then and today with the iPhones and iPads. It's a quantum leap in difference.
Even just yesterday, there was a new on iPhone. They've got an app called Shortcuts, and Shortcuts allows you to make little connections between different apps.
Yeah.
And they've just added a gallery called the Accessibility Gallery.
Cool.
And it's got accessibility-specific apps, accessibility-specific shortcuts, and one of which is this amazing shortcut where you can say, hey Siri, find my GIF mood. And, GIFs, like the little animated pictures. I always think GIF, but I've got to force myself to say GIF.
I don't think it really matters in the end, but anyway.
No. And you can say that, and then it asks you, what emotion do you want to find?
Yeah.
And you can say excited, and it will bring up a list of all the GIFs that reflect that emotion.
Yeah.
Now, for our kids, a big part of their goals are to recognise different emotions, recognise how they're feeling. And the way that we used to do that in the past was we would show them pictures, or we'd go through magazines and say, let's cut out pictures of everyone who looks happy.
Yeah.
Let's cut out pictures of everyone who looks scared.
Yeah.
And now, in the palm of their hand, they've got thousands of real animated people doing all these big exaggerated emotions, and they can just search and then send that to somebody or use it for a task. And you think that's just something that launched yesterday. GIFs are things that we all use to communicate and tweet with, but now it's able to be used in an accessibility format, which is very cool.
Yeah, I mean, just the digitization of everything has all these incredible consequences, especially for the accessibility, seeker who just wasn't able to do this before. But it's just, as you said, the kids have grown up with this. It's now a standard part of their life, which must be a great relief for them too.
Oh, absolutely. And their families as well. I know we've, lots of the time when we train our kids in how to use these devices and these tools, the parents learn as well so they can support, but then the families find they use it in their own life, just for their own. I know one mum who we were using a particular visual timetable tool with her son, and she came in the next week and she said, look, I'm using it because it helps me organise my day and it feels great. So, they're tools for everybody.
So you've kind of hinted here and there different things that happen in a day, but what's a day in the life for you as an autism educator?
Yeah, I think I love the sort of work that I do because you never quite know what the day is going to be like. And a big part of our job is problem solving to find the best ways to motivate kids to really want to learn and build on their personal goals.
Yeah.
I mean, things like I'm really interested in what kids love. So I want to sit down with kids and find out what they're interested in, what the latest trends are, and then think, well, how can I use this as part of their education? So when Pokemon Go came out a couple of years back now, I wasn't into Pokemon myself, but I thought I need to know this. I can't just be the teacher who couldn't care less what the kids are doing. So I was like, what are you doing? Show me how to play. Yeah. And then I immediately just could see these potentials and thought this is a game where kids are being motivated to go outside, to explore their local neighbourhoods, talk to others about the Pokemon they're catching. And so we created a curriculum based on Pokemon Go and started to use it in our classrooms and classrooms around the world. So I think that's a part of my day is just trying to think what's the pulse of interest that kids have at the moment and how can we manufacture that into something that will help them learn and explore the world.
And you were just mentioning before, talking about, encouraging kids, motivating kids to learn. And I remember growing up, I was reading the story of Helen Keller, who was, deaf, dumb and blind, and she couldn't see, she couldn't hear, she couldn't speak. And, there was talking about how her teacher was trying to trace letters on her hand, and one day she finally got it, and I mean, that was well before the era of iPhones and iPads. But you must see these moments of understanding and of kids sort of getting switched on and going, wow, I understand this, or being able to communicate. These little breakthroughs that would just, it must be joyful for you as an educator to see, and for them too.
I mean, I was just thinking of a moment where we had a class of students, and one of the students was not able to verbalise their understanding of a story that was being read in class. So the teacher was reading Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, reading the story, and she wanted to know what the students were understanding of the story. And this particular student found it very hard to verbalise, very hard to write down or type his understanding. So she created an activity where in Minecraft, the students would create the last chapter that she read of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. So they'd create the environment, they'd create the characters, and then the teacher would walk through their world of the chocolate factory to see what they've been doing. So this student who, again, found it very hard to verbalise, found it hard to write, he was able to create this beautifully accurate, realised world of what he just listened to, of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and then walk the teacher through this space. So she knew exactly what he understood and wanted to represent. But if you didn't have that tool, and if you didn't have a teacher who was willing to try some creative options there, she may never have really got to tap into what he understood. And I think those sorts of things are wonderful when you see creativity meet tech and think, well, now we can get a whole new view into what our kids are understanding and experiencing.
Incredible, incredible. So, look, you've already mentioned iPads and Spheros, but what are some of the other apps? And you also mentioned Arduino. But are there any other apps you want to mention for people watching this that are thinking, I need to get this app or that app, or you've had success with these types of hardware? Any sort of short list of things that are in your world?
One of my absolute favourite apps that I always go to, and it's a simple app, but it's just terribly effective. It's called ChoiceWorks, and it's an app for iPad, for iPhone. And what ChoiceWorks does is it lets you create visual schedules, so like a visual timetable on your iPad or iPhone. And you don't need to use pictures. You can use video, so you could have like a video timetable. And one of the things that I say to teachers is, if you're going to have any tool in your classroom to help your kids, use a timetable, because timetables, they sound boring. It sounds like the most boring thing in the world. But if you can let kids know the expectations of their day as to what they're going to do step by step, and it could be macro, like across a whole day, or it could be micro in terms of a small lesson. If you can schedule that, you're giving kids such a huge bonus. And what ChoiceWorks does is it just lets you create really interactive video modelling, photo modelling ways of doing that. So yeah, ChoiceWorks is just a fantastic app. I'd also say it's really just worth exploring the accessibility settings within the device themselves. It's phenomenally deep just how you can go in terms of personalising the device. So you don't have to buy anything. You can just, with your device, you go into your accessibility settings and look at what you can turn on or turn off to maximise the accessibility for you. For me, I turn on things like speak screen. So if I've got text on a screen, I just give it a tap with my fingers and it reads the text out loud. I'm someone who, I listen to videos when I go for a walk. So I'll put like a video on and put it in my pocket, put headphones on. But then sometimes your leg will bump against the screen and it changes the app or whatever. So I use an accessibility feature called guided access.
Yes, I know the one.
And guided access restricts how you interact with the screen. And that's an example of like something that, for me, it helps me watch a video while I'm going for a walk, or have a listen to a video because I don't interact with the screen. But in our classroom, guided access can be the key to keeping a student focused on doing one task without jumping in between apps, because it can help you just focus on that one app and you don't have to interact with it. And there's just so many things like that. So I do encourage you to look in accessibility options and just see what you can turn on to help your life and maybe your family's life too.
Yeah, for those who remember Walkmans, and you know, if you were walking around and you pushed the wrong button on your Walkman and it would stop or play or fast forward or rewind, guided access is like the hold button. You know, it used to be orange, and you'd hold and it would stop everything from being able to be touched. And that is very handy. And also, sometimes if you watch certain video apps like SBS On Demand, if you have an iPhone and you've got that little white line at the bottom, you know, on Netflix, that white line will disappear. But on SBS On Demand, it doesn't. And it's like, SBS, you guys don't like, you know, you're not iPhone or iPad friendly because you've got that stupid line all the time. But guided access takes all that sort of stuff away. That's true. So that, yeah, I mean, that's very true. I mean, you know, I'm in my 40s and I interact with a lot of seniors. I help seniors. I give seminars to seniors about technology. I like to tell them I'm a future senior. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because, I mean, you know, accessibility is not just for students with autism, but it's for people who are seniors, as an example, who want bigger font sizes. I come across people who don't know that you can increase the font size on your display, or that you can activate Siri and do so many things by voice. And they're like this, they're amazed. They've had their phone for however many years and they've never known. And of course, Apple does have classes, which I recommend people go to. But, you know, there are great YouTube videos, and, I mean, you could learn something, you know, it might even be something where you can get some students from your class to go and visit an old age home, as an example, where you know that they use iPhones and iPads, and to show them, hey, you guys can use the same things we do to make your lives easier. I know that some schools do that, but I've never heard of autism students doing that. That might be something worth exploring one day, you know, with your local... You know? Absolutely agree, Alex. No, it's hard, and you just made me think of my father just got an iPad last Christmas, and he's someone who has not been involved with any sort of technology. I think he went from a rotary phone straight to an iPad. Yeah. And his thing that he loves to do is watch old documentaries. Yep. And so I showed him how to go online and look those up, but he finds it very difficult to interact with the screen because he hasn't grown up with sort of touch screens. Yeah. He doesn't quite have the right touch. Yep. So I just said, you don't even have to touch the screen. You can just say what you want to say. So he just says out loud the things that he wants to look up and search for, and it knows his voice now because he's trained it so well after time. And now he does that, and he's got complete control over his device. He's doing it his way. Yep. And again, he's using, like you said, he's using an accessibility tool that's not just for kids, not just for people with a specific need, it's for everybody. And one other thing that might help him also regain some of the touch if he ever needs that is to get him one of those pens that has the little bubble on top that's designed for touchscreens. And if it's an iPad and if it's Apple Pencil compatible, that's useful too. But I've found some people who have difficulty with their fingers are quite happy to get the pen and suddenly they've got the control again. And that might be something, but of course, you know, voice is even better. So have any of the students expressed an interest in helping to further develop accessibility technologies, or have even already come up with things that you've passed back to, you know, Apple or to app makers to improve what they've got? Yeah, I've definitely had students who want to make their own apps and have come up with some really interesting ideas. I know one student was having a chat to me one day. He said, my mum just keeps losing her keys all over the house, and I want to make an app that I can type in the thing that we've lost and it will track it down. And that's a great idea. And I thought later, I mean, there are Bluetooth little things you can tile. Yeah, they already exist. Right. Yeah. But nothing stopping him from trying to refine that, you know, even in an even better way. Exactly. So he was really interested in that. I've had other kids who I think are very interested in the potentials of augmented reality and virtual reality. They come up with ideas all the time, like wouldn't it be great to put on glasses and stand at the kitchen bench and say,
how do I make a ham and cheese sandwich?
Yep.
And then the little ingredients will all float down and land on the kitchen bench, and then they can make a sandwich. So yeah, they've got some stunning ideas, and I think the more that we do hackathons with kids and get them designing and taking agency over that stuff, that's why I like technology like Makey as well, where you can plug it into a computer, hook little alligator clips up to Play-Doh or bananas or whatever, and then kids can interact with tactile mediums to interact with the computer. And we've had kids create alternate game controllers and music devices and all sorts of stuff with this sort of DIY culture that's emerging. So
and this,
I love that.
Makey, is it Makey, or how do you spell that?
That's exactly how it's spelled.
And is that something that connects to a PC or Mac, or is that an iPad, or?
Just connects to any sort of computer. So it actually it's like a little circuit board similar to Raspberry Pi and Arduino, but very simple. And it replicates the keyboard inputs and mouse inputs. So you can hook, like I said, it comes with these alligator clips, and you hook it up to a button that says this will activate the space bar, or this will activate the mouse, and then whatever tactile input you hook it up to, like Play-Doh, it will send that signal into the computer. So you think, like, I've got ideas of what I can do with that, but you leave that with a class full of kids for a day, and then suddenly got a whole new world of stuff that they can do. So, yeah, I love seeing that.
Absolutely. So, look, I've got 3 questions that I always like to finish on, and the third last is, how do you see the accessibility technology industry changing, evolving, and maturing over the next decade? What would you like to see? What do you expect to come?
I think that the thing that I always think of that I'd like to see the accessibility technology evolve into is for it to read the needs of the user without the user needing to tell the device.
Yeah.
So one example of that, and you mentioned actually a great example of that, where when you work with seniors and you talk about technology, you say you can bump up the font size, you can adjust the contrast. And I think, wouldn't it be interesting to have cameras on the front of our devices, like how Face ID on the iPad and the iPhone, if those become so sophisticated that they can look at a face and they can think, oh, the person's eyes are not focusing as easily as they should be here, or they're blinking a little too much. Let's adjust the contrast, let's adjust the brightness automatically. I guess at the moment it does it according to light.
Yeah, with True Tone,
Exactly, with True Tone. It'd be so fascinating to see it do that on an individual level based on how users are interacting. So that way we wouldn't need to say, here's how to use this accessibility feature. The device would say, I know exactly what you need. I'm going to set it up for you, and we'll go from there.
It's predictive analytics and AI on steroids.
Exactly right.
And presumably we will see, the Apple glasses and other, think interfaces, which we hear various sort of, early prototypes of. People can turn a light switch on or off, but just imagine think to type or think to create in Minecraft. It's got to be coming, right?
And that stuff's like, we know that it's already been used to do things like control like printed hands, people have sort of printed plastic hands that can be controlled with the mind. The sophistication of that will just get better and better to, exactly as you said, it'll control things, and that will be a very wild space to start playing around in.
George Lucas's dream of using the Force will become real.
Exactly right.
So then just to switch to you for a moment, I always like to ask the people I interview, what's the best piece of advice you've ever received to help you get where you are today? Yeah,
that's a really good question. I think the best piece of advice given to me was, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Throw yourself into scary situations. You might think you're punching way above your underneath your weight balance there, but I think if you challenge yourself, chuck yourself into situations you're not sure that you can handle, and then you'll rise to the occasion. And I always try to go towards the scariest things, and I always see good results.
Yeah, go in the deep end, take the road less travelled, that sort of thing.
Exactly.
And so what's your final message to ITY viewers and readers, and to your current and future students, teachers and tech partners?
I think go and think about accessibility. Think about how you can create things that are not just for one person or for a group of people, but designing for the edges so that everybody is included. And think about how we can maximize the strengths and interests of our kids and yourself, and we'll see the amazing results that come out of that.
Well, Craig Smith, autism educator and accessibility specialist, I hope you have a great day tomorrow for the Global Accessibility Awareness Day with yourself and your students, and I hope we can talk again in the future.
I look forward to it, Alex. Thanks for a good chat.
Thank you very much.